Let's have a look at question 2 in this video. So what is the consumer surplus in equilibrium? Now, to find out the consumer surplus, we want to see the difference between the demand curve, the willingness to pay, and the equilibrium price. So for that, we need the price of the consumer, so of the demand side. So let's write it from here. We have the quantity demanded function. If we write it as a price function, we'll have to change places. We'll take minus 20p on the other side, so that becomes 20p equals to 400 minus the quantity demanded. 400 minus the quantity demanded. If we divide both sides by 20, we will get that the price of the demand side is equal to 400 divided by 20, which is 20, minus quantity demanded divided by 20, so minus 1 over 20 quantity demanded. Let's keep this line in mind and draw it on a graph and match it with the equilibrium price. So that's going to be the demand curve, 20 minus 1 over 20q. If we do it over here, price, quantity, the intercept of the demand is going to be 20. The intercept of the demand is going to be 20, and the slope is going to be minus 1 over 20, so that's a relatively flat slope, which is not going to be very accurate anyway, but for the sake of the example, trying to do what we can. This is going to be the demand. Now, what was the equilibrium price? The equilibrium price was over here 10, and the equilibrium quantity 200. So at the price of 10, it's gonna be somewhere halfway through over here. We used to sell how much? 100. Let me go back. 200 units. So we used to sell 200 units. In equilibrium. I'm gonna put a star to show that this is the equilibrium. Recall the consumer surplus is gonna show us the difference between the willingness to pay, the demand line, and the price. So it's gonna be all this area over here. And since this is a triangle, we're going to calculate the area of the triangle. So the consumer surplus, in this case, is going to equal to 1 over 2 times the height, which is the difference between 20 and 10, 20 minus 10, and the length, which is the difference between 200 and 0, 200 minus 0. Now, what is a half times 20 minus 10? That's 10 times 200. Now, 202 cancel out. 202 cancel out. There's going to be 100. 100 times 10 is going to give us 1,000. So 1,000, let's say, dollars worth of value are saved to the consumers because they're paying less than they would be willing to pay. That's the intuition of the consumer surplus. So it's quite efficient in this case. That was the consumer surplus for question 2, by the way. Let's have a look at question 3. What's happening there? Question 3. Suppose now that the producers put a ceiling on their production at 150, what's gonna be the new price of the grain? So if the production is gonna be at 150, we want to see how that's gonna affect the price that the consumers are gonna pay. So in that case, we wanna know how much the consumers are paying when they are buying 150 units. So we'll substitute this into the quantity demanded function. And if we do so in the quantity demanded function, we will have 150. We'll have 150 in question 3. We'll have, actually I'm going to write the demand function first, because otherwise we lose track. And I'm not going to write it, I'm just going to crop it. I'm going to crop it like that. Take it from here over here. So paste it. Now if we know that producers are going to supply only 150 units, we want to see how much the demanders are going to pay at that level. So 150 at that demand level, 150 is equal to 400 minus 20 times the price that the consumers would pay. Let's work out the math. Take the price on the other side, becomes 20p equals to 400 minus 150. 400 minus 150. 400 minus 150 is equal to 250, and that's going to be equal to 20 times the price. Let me just divide this real quick by over here. 250 divided by 20, 12.5. So the price in equilibrium at that level is gonna be equal to 12.5. That's how much the consumers are going to pay. Okay, that was question 3. Let's have a look what's happening in question 4. Question 4 over here. Suppose that the government sets a minimal price at 20 and it guarantees that we'll buy the excess supply. So let's have a look what is going to be the equilibrium at that point, whether there's going to be excess supply or not. Now if the price is 20, that means that the consumers have to pay 20. So let's see how much the consumers are gonna pay at that level. We have the price function from here. Let's again crop that and work it out below. That's gonna be the price function. So let's copy it and paste it for question 4 here below. We're working on question 4. Get my pencil. So at the price of 20 that the government sets, the demand is going to be 20 minus 1 over 2 times the quantity. What does that mean? Well, that means that this thing over here has to be equal to 0, because 20 minus 20 is 0, which means that 1 over 20 times the quantity demanded is equal to 0, and that's only happening when the quantity demanded is 0. So at that level, no one wants to buy. That's what it means. Consumers demand 0 grains at that level. It's too expensive. It means any supply that happens is going to be in excess because no one's buying it by definition. So what's the supply at that level? We also need the supply at that level to see how much the government is going to buy, since it's so tactical about his policies. Here, it will buy any supply. Now, the supply is given in this function. Let's crop that, solve it. So here, let's solve it below. The price is 20. The producers would like to supply how much? If the price is 20, the quantity supplied is equal to 100 plus 10 times 20. 100 plus 10 times 20 is equal to 100 plus 200, 300 units. That's gonna be 300 units of grains at the price of 20, right? They're worth 20, so we wanna see how much it costs. 300 times 20, that gives us $6,000. So the government has to pay all this money to buy all that grains because no consumers wants to buy. That's what it means. So that was question 4. The last question has to deal with the taxes, and let's leave it for the next video.